I'm back here at the ironing board, and to reiterate what we've done, we've got our very first crochet block with the single crochet, and this one is already blocked, and as you can see, it is very squared up. It's exactly 7 inches, and it's very fluid and soft. And we did the third block, which is this one right here. Now this one here was just a tiny bit too small, by like 1/4 of an inch, and I had to actually stretch this one and block it. And this one right here, this is the double crochet. This is block number 3. This one here was like 1/2 an inch too big widthwise, and about 1/4 of an inch too big lengthwise. So I had to kind of scrunch this one, whereas the other one I had to stretch. This one I had to scrunch it together, and I hit it with some steam, and it is measuring exactly at 7 inches by 7 inches on the nose now. So that's the beauty of using steam. It literally just shrinks that yarn back up. When we handle it, we tend to stretch it out a lot. So the steam just causes it to just shrink right back up, and it brought it to the perfect 7 inch by 7 inch size. I'm going to pull this one up, and we'll see how it feels. And then we're going to take a look at our second block, which is the half double crochet. I've got a lot of pins in this one because it was so big. I had to use a lot of pins to anchor it down. Okay, oh, more pin. Okay, so here we go. This is, I feel like I do still have a couple pins in there. And speaking of pins, I know I've got some T-pins somewhere in my craft room, but I just used regular nickel-plated steel silk pins, which works just fine. The T-pins are really nice because it's got that T shape at the top so that they don't go right through your, the holes of your crochet. Oh my goodness, this feels so good. Do you see how soft and drapey that is? That makes just a huge difference, and it's now the perfect size, and it's 7 inches on the side, 7 inches on the top, so we're going to be able to pick up our stitches perfectly around the edges to border these. Okay, so our other half double crochet, this was actually block number 2. And this here is actually measuring 7 inches by 7 inches. But as you can kind of see, it's at the bottom, it kind of curves inwards on the top and the bottom. It has this curve going on, making this a little more stretched out, at the edges here. And it's also really stiff. So we are going to go ahead and block this just like we did our other ones. We're just going to lay it down, and the edges here are measuring a little bit longer, I think. Yeah, just maybe by like 7 1/4 inches. So that part there, I'm actually going to scrunch up a little bit because it's a little bit too big. And when you're doing this, make sure you put the pins right. You actually want to pierce the yarn. You don't want to, you know how crochet is kind of holey? You want to make sure that you pierce the yarn and you don't get in between the stitches in the holes. So now this is a little stretched out over here, but in the middle it kind of curves inward. So this we're actually going to have to stretch in the middle. And I'm just lining it up with the lines on my ironing board. And then I'm going to take my ruler to it. You want to make sure you have accurate measurements before you steam it, because you don't want it to set. Although if you do steam it and it's still not right, just go ahead and re-steam it again and block it again, and it should straighten out. Okay, let's see where I'm at here. Oh yeah, 7 inches right on the nose in the middle. And yeah, I need to kind of pull this up just a little bit and scrunch that just a hair. I know it seems really weird to scrunch it and that it shrinks up, but it really does work. Yeah, that's just a little bit off, so I'm gonna correct it. Okay, and I've probably got the same thing going on over here. It probably needs to scrunch just a hair. You can see where you scrunch it, it gets, you know, like this waviness going on. But I promise you that it will actually straighten out. Okay, and just put your ruler on top. Yep, I've got 7 inches there. 7 inches. This one needs to come down just a smidge. Just keep fussing with it and you'll get it right. You'll get it. You just want to make sure you get it right on the nose. I like to measure the middle area and both ends just to make sure that I'm spot on. It's actually a little bit measuring too wide, so I'm going to kind of push it inwards a little bit. Yeah, that's better. Same thing here. It's just a little bit too wide. So, yep, there we go, 7 inches, and I bet I got the same thing up here. Yep, this one here too needs to be pushed in just a tiny bit. Use as many pins or as little pins as what you need to get it to the right dimensions. Okay, and double check everything before you steam it. Okay, and again with your iron, just make sure that your iron is on the polyester setting. If you're using a synthetic type of yarn, my iron turned off, so I need to give it a minute here. I'm just gonna check this top part one more time. You definitely still feel like this is just a little too far out. And you just want to make sure that you're setting it on the acrylic setting on your iron. If you're using, or polyester setting is what mine is, if you're using acrylic or artificial, you know, type of yarn, like if you're not using like a linen or cotton type of yarn or like some type of natural fabric, you want to kind of lower the temperature on your iron a little bit so that you don't melt your project. And you definitely want to make sure that you boy, I still feel like I'm just a little too much here. I'm just going going to push this side in just a hair too. Okay, so you see the process here. You just got to keep fussing with it until you get it right. Okay, I feel like this is much better. Pull that down just a little bit. Maybe pull this down a little. Make sure it looks really squared. Okay. Okay, so back to the iron. You want to make sure that your iron is on a synthetic type of setting if you are using a synthetic type of yarn. Now, if you're using like a cotton yarn, then go ahead and, crank that baby up to the cotton setting if you want to. But you never actually want to put the iron directly on the fabric, even if it is like a cotton yarn, because you don't really want to ruin the texture of your stitches. So you're just going to hover the iron and you're just going to let it steam. I've got it on the steam setting and it'll start steaming. Feel free to give it like a big burst of steam if you want to. If your iron has the burst of steam, go ahead and do that. And the goal is that you really want to saturate this. You really want it to get really, really wet. And so what it does when it does this is it sets that yarn into the crinkled, like if you were to undo this, it would look a little crinkly, the yarn would itself, because when it comes from the factory, you can see how straight that is. So when you steam this, it actually, as you crochet and you get all these curly loopy things that go on. I'm just crocheting with my fingers here. So it forms all these loops. And so what you're actually doing when you steam this is you're actually setting all those loops into place, and it just gives it that real drapey, it just sets it so that it's real drapey instead of being real stiff. So very much like sewing. Like if you're a sewer, you know that your iron is everything, and every time you do a seam, you sew a seam, you have to iron every single seam. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this until it is absolutely saturated all the way through, and then I'm just going to let this just sit overnight until it is completely dry before I unpin it from my ironing board. And that is how you block something that's basically, this one was basically the correct measurements. The other two, the yellow block was a little too small. The orange block was a little too big. This one was, pretty much spot on at 7 inches, just, by a hair off or whatever. But, so you see the difference that steaming it and blocking it can make. It just really sets it to the exact dimensions that you need.